In this example, we're going to be looking at counted loops once again, but we're going to look at a new structure called a for loop. So let me just get this set up. So if we run it from its original state here, we'll see that the while loop is counting from 0 to 9. And we can see how that works by looking at the code. So we have the count variable initialized to 0, and then we have a while loop, which has the keyword while, our condition, while the count is less than 10, full colon, and then two indented lines, one that carries out the actual body of our loop, the thing we want to do, and then we have another line that is incrementing our counter, which will allow this loop to terminate. Now, if we wanted to use a for loop, it's a different kind of a structure. If we want to go from 0 to 9, we'll say for variable name, and then we'll say in range start, stop, step. If we want to specify those parameters, we don't need to use all of them. In this particular case, we're going to say for, let's say count again, for count in range. Now I want to start at 0 and go to 9. So I have a couple ways to do that. I could say 10, and I could say print count here. Run that. We can see that that goes to 0 to 9 as we would expect. So this range command, if we just specify one argument, that is the stop. And it is not inclusive. If I want it to be explicit, I could say start at 0 and go up to, but not including 10. If I don't put the step, it's going by ones, positive 1. So if I run this again, we'll just verify, yes, example 2 is counting the same way. I can, of course, also use start and stop variables in my range statements. So, for example, I could say for count in range start, comma, finish. Now, because I want to include finish, I'm going to say +1 in my range, and then print count. Run that. And we see example 3 works exactly the same way. And then you can, of course, control these things based on user input or calculations or whatnot. Our for loop doesn't have to go up by ones. We could make our for loop go from 10 to 1, counting backwards. To do this, we'll have to use all three parameters of the range function. We're going to have to say for, we can use count again, in range 10, comma 1, comma -1. Now, this actually will not do what we want because remember it's not inclusive of our ending value. So we're actually going to have to make that a little bit further. And we'll run that. Example 4, counting from 10 down to 1, which is what we expect. If we wanted to go by something that was more than 1, we can specify that as well. So let's count from 1 to 20, counting by 2s. Now it's starting at 1, which is odd, so it's not going to get to 20, which is fine. For count in range 1, 2, in this case, we could just say 20 because we know it's not going to get there anyway. And we'll run that. And we can see counting by 2s, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on, up until 19. One other thing that I should mention, always remember to put your colon. And I know that I tend to put semicolons at the end of the lines. Those are optional, but as you go on in programming, you'll probably be using languages like C, C++, Java, and so forth. And it doesn't hurt to have that as a habit.